Turn from injured reserve, opening his 21-day practice window to be placed on the 53-man roster. Welcome into Sports Unlimited. Andrews suffered a serious ankle injury back on November 16th against the Bengals. That caused him to miss the last 6 games. Initially, it was believed to be a season ender, but John Harbaugh, he did say that there was an outside chance that Andrews could return. The question is, what does Andrews' timetable look like now?
I think we're on the same timetable that we were on. You know, we're in that range. You know, but today was the first day. Did individual. That was it. So we kind of ran from there and just we'll get into next week and we'll have a better idea. Everybody knows, and everybody kind of knew he's coming out and practicing. So they're happy for Mark. You know, you always want to see one of the brothers back out there doing their thing.
Well, 6 Ravens have earned All-Pro honors from the Associated Press. Lamar Jackson, Roquan Smith, and Kyle Hamilton have all been named to the first team, while linebacker Patrick Queen, D-lineman Justin Matabike, and fullback Patrick Ricard landed on the second team. According to multiple reports, Washington head coach Kalen DeBoer has agreed to a deal to replace Nick Saban as the next head coach at Alabama. In 2 seasons leading the Huskies, DeBoer went 25-3 overall, taking Washington to its first college football playoff national title game. Well, still ahead, Isaiah Likely weighs in on the return of fellow tight end Mark Andrews. Plus, we're going to check in with Towson women's basketball coming up on the late edition of Sports Unlimited.
We are weather alert as we prepare for rain, which could be heavy at times, and gusty winds. Now that's going to be for this evening and tonight, but tomorrow it's back to dry weather. Temperatures will start off in the 40s and 50s, but they fall throughout the day. We're only looking at the 40s by the afternoon, and it is going to be breezy at times. On Sunday, temperatures will be on the cooler side in the upper 30s and low 40s. It'll be breezy, but a bigger cool down is going to follow for the work week, and we even have the chance for a few snow flurries. I'll break down the timing of today's weather maker and let you know what to expect as we head into the upcoming week in my full forecast in about 20 minutes. Back to you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6 o'clock, Governor Wes Moore introduces a new way to deter gun violence in Maryland. We break down how much it could cost taxpayers. And our weather alert coverage continues. Our team is live in Annapolis, tracking the latest conditions and risk for more flooding.
We are weather alert tonight with the potential for more heavy rain this evening, how businesses are preparing after flooding earlier this week. Governor Wes Moore's proposed gun violence prevention program facing some controversy, what it could cost you, the taxpayer. And we're following breaking news tonight out of the Middle East as the U.S. warns ships to stay out of parts of the Red Sea following last night's joint strikes on Yemen.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
We are in weather alert tonight with more rain moving into our area. Good evening and thanks for staying with us. I'm Mackenzie Frost. We have team coverage of the storm system heading our way. In a few moments, Fox 45's Vincent Hill will join us live with how businesses in Annapolis are preparing for what could turn into a second round of flooding. But first, Jasmine Lomax is live in the studio with what we can expect tonight. Jasmine, what is the forecast telling us?
Thanks, Mackenzie. It's going to be similar with the past system in terms of heavy rain and gusty winds. However, this is going to be a little faster moving, and that means that rainfall totals are expected to be just a little lower. Notice we have alerts posted ahead of the system, and now we're starting to see the rain move farther and farther east. Over the next hour, you can expect the rain over your area. At times, the rain could be heavy, so if you're traveling anywhere this evening or tonight, you certainly want to make sure that you are driving safely. Now, in addition to heavy rain, we're also looking at gusty winds. Right now, wind speeds are around 10-15 miles per hour across the Baltimore metro, but in western Maryland, the number is significantly higher. As that system continues to move east, you can expect the winds to pick up with gusts up to 50, even greater than that, miles per hour. So coming up, I'll have a closer look at the timing of this system and the impacts in my Weather Authority forecast. Back to you.
Jasmine, thanks. Areas like Annapolis were hit with some major flooding this week, leaving some businesses left to pick up the pieces. Fox 45's Vincent Hill is in Annapolis with how business owners are preparing to avoid even more damage.
Yeah, I'm with Kate Wilkerson of the local art gallery here in Annapolis. And Kate, you guys got flooded pretty bad on Tuesday. Kind of walk me through what you saw when you came in Wednesday.
So I got here about 11:30 Wednesday morning, and we knew from the information that we got from the city that it was going to be a pretty significant flood. So we were prepared, but we weren't fully prepared. We were able to move all of our art to get that out of harm's way. But basically, we came in and everything was wet. We know we had some water in here. We could tell from our print bin here. It measures right at 11.5 inches. So we knew that we had had some water damage in here. The carpeting was soaking wet, and we've just been trying to clean up.
And speaking of cleanup, how long has that been taking you?
We started as soon as we got here on Wednesday, and we're still at it.
And there's a chance that this could all happen again tonight. What are your thoughts on that? That not only are you trying to clean up from the first time, but you may have to do it again.
Well, we didn't put any of the art back on the walls below waist level, so that's a good thing. And we have our sandbags from the city, and we'll just use those and do our best to keep the water at bay and not have any more issues.
And you were telling me that you and your daughter recently purchased this art gallery. As a small business owner, how can something like this impact your business? Like, essentially, this is going to cost several $1,000s. How can this impact your business?
Well, it's a holiday weekend in Annapolis, and those are usually pretty big for us. So, unfortunately, not being open right now. And even though we're closed, we still have people coming in trying to come in and look at the art. So it hits us pretty hard. But the mayor has issued a state of emergency, and we now will have access to some grant funds, which will help us to offset the costs and reimburse us.
Okay. All right, Kate, thank you so much. For now, we're in Annapolis. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
As heavy rain flooded neighborhood streets in Strongwood swept through the city earlier this week, criminals were targeting cars parked in Fells Point. Take a look at these images. 2 cars with windows smashed, filled with shattered glass. One was hot-wired and left running in the middle of Thames Street. The other belonging to resident Phyllis Rush, who says safety features upgrades were not enough to keep her car safe from criminals.
I did all these preventions so that this kind of thing wouldn't happen. And, in Fells Point, it's a pretty safe neighborhood, and there's lots of people out all the time, and people walking their dogs, people over at the park with their kids. There's always, it's busy. And who would have thought on a horrible storm day that these punks would have been out.
According to Baltimore police, less than 2 weeks into the new year, the city has seen 172 car thefts and attempted car thefts and at least 14 carjackings. Governor Wes Moore is moving forward with his proposal to create a new center for gun violence prevention and intervention. Not only is the plan raising redundancy questions, but also questions about tracking your tax dollars. The push to address public safety in Maryland from Governor Wes Moore includes 3 bills. None specifically go after juvenile crime, but one proposal.
We will introduce a bill to create a new Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention.
Is sparking debate about what it is and how it will work. Governor Moore says the center will operate out of the health department.
The best way to address gun violence is to prevent it from ever happening in the first place.
But the governor's office already has a $10 million violence intervention and prevention program, launched in 2018 when then-Governor Larry Hogan signed the legislation. So we tried to clarify how Governor Wes Moore plans to move forward.
And would the center that you're pushing for replace the existing program that's already in place?
It wouldn't replace it, it would supplement it.
He says it will look for best practices in Maryland and beyond for finding illegal guns in communities and getting them off the streets. In addition to the new center, the governor says it will help with data coordination.
How are we doing a better job of having intelligence that's going to be both coordinated and shared, but also assessed so we see the trends?
But there are still unanswered questions, especially about how Governor Moore's plan will impact nonprofits in Maryland.
Those who are closest to the problem are the ones who are closest to the solutions. They're just hardly ever at the table, right? So we have to change our posture when it comes to working with community organizations.
But again, that effort is already happening with the existing violence prevention program.
And this could be a massive waste of taxpayer money.
Baltimore City's Safe Streets program gets funding from the state through the existing plan, and Safe Streets has a checkered history, especially with seeing sustained success in all of the areas. And now the FBI bringing attention to the Bel Air Edison site after agents executed a search warrant last year. That site still inactive. Fox 45 News sending questions to Governor Moore's office again Friday, asking, will this new center direct money to nonprofits? If so, how will that money be tracked at the state level and monitored to ensure it's being spent wisely? Will the new center require new funding allocations to be operational? If so, what's the price tag? And under this new center, will it financially support Safe Streets? Meanwhile, Governor Moore is looking to lawmakers to usher his priorities through this session. Now, we're still waiting for answers to those questions that we sent to Governor Wes Moore's office earlier today. We'll let you know if we hear back.
Fox 45 is following some breaking news tonight out of the Middle East, with the United States warning ships to stay out of parts of the Red Sea as Houthi rebels threaten retaliation for yesterday's strikes in Yemen. The U.S. Navy is warning American vessels to steer clear of areas around Yemen in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden for 72 hours. The United States and UK launched multiple airstrikes last night targeting Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Houthi rebels have vowed retaliation for those strikes, raising concerns of a wider conflict in the Middle East. U.S. military and White House officials say they expect the Houthis to strike and strike it back. At a stop today in Pennsylvania, President Biden said he believes the Houthis and Iran got the message and the airstrikes were a success.
We will make sure that we respond to the Houthis as they continue this outrageous behavior, along with our allies.
Well, last night's strike was a response to a recent campaign of drone and missile attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea, sparked by the Israel-Hamas war. 2 waves of strikes from the United States and UK targeted around 24 military locations in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen. This is a developing story. Stay with Fox 45 News for the latest updates on air and online.
With the nation's debt at over $34 trillion, critics are urging presidential candidates to prioritize this issue on the campaign trail. I'm Janae Bowens in Washington with more.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
We are on weather alert tonight with more heavy rain on the way. Let's get right over to meteorologist Jasmine Lomax. Jasmine, what is it looking like right now outside?
Thanks, Mackenzie. We're starting to see the rain move closer and closer to the Baltimore area. It's pushing east, and as that continues to happen, you'll notice that wind speeds pick up, especially late tonight. And we're even looking at the possibility for heavy rain as we track this system that's leading to snow and storms across the country. This powerful system will have impacts into the night, but following that cold front, we're still looking at breezy conditions this weekend. So notice on the HD radar, we're now starting to see more rain move into our area. We're seeing some spots of moderate, even heavy rain closer to the state line, but that rain will continue to spread across the Baltimore metro this evening and even into the night. We're still overcast here. 47 for the current temperature with winds out of the east, and it's breezy. Those wind speeds are going to pick up, though, late tonight. Temperatures are in the 40s and even a couple spots in the 50s around the state. Notice we, though, have several alerts in place ahead of this system, including a flood watch for all of the spots in dark green. Grounds are saturated from Tuesday's storm, so heavy rain could certainly lead to flooding in low-lying and flood-prone areas. We're also keeping track of coastal conditions. We have coastal flood advisories in place for the spots in lime green, and then for the dark green, coastal flood warnings. There could be flooding there due to tidal inundation, so you certainly want to make sure that if you live along the coast that you are paying attention to updates and you have ways to receive any warnings that are issued. Now we're also keeping track of winds, those wind speeds picking up, and we have a wind advisory in place. But it's not just this evening and tonight when we're talking gusty winds, but also tomorrow and even on Sunday. Notice on the future scan, we're keeping track of showers. Tonight, we have the threat of heavy rain, and this is when we start to notice those gusty winds greater than 40, even 50 miles per hour. Once we get closer to midnight, the heaviest rain begins to taper. Showers become a little more spotty, but it will still be breezy. We'll stay mostly dry tonight. Tomorrow, though, we will start off with a couple of isolated showers. That's all before a drier afternoon with a few clouds lingering. Notice those wind speeds, though, 30, even 40 miles per hour. So you can expect the breezy conditions lasting through the entire weekend. It's going to be nice and dry on Sunday with a little more sunshine. In terms of rainfall totals, this is going to be a fast system, so we're not expecting the highest totals, possibly up to 1.5 inches. Locally, higher amounts could be possible, especially within areas of heavy rain. 43 for the low temperature tonight. We're looking at gusts up to 40, even 50 miles per hour. And then tomorrow, still keeping with those breezy conditions. The day begins with temperatures in the 50s for the morning, but the numbers drop, and by the afternoon, we're only looking at the 40s. Coming up, I'll have a closer look at the cool temperatures you can expect next week, and I'll let you know when we could have snow in the exclusive 10-day forecast.
Jasmine, thanks. The U.S. has more than $34 trillion of debt. Critics say reducing that bill needs to be a bigger focus for the presidential election. Sinclair National correspondent Janae Bowens breaks down the numbers.
As the 2024 primary season kicks off in just a few days, the issue of the national debt isn't a huge focus on the campaign trail.
Our Republicans did this to us, too.
We've heard presidential candidates like Nikki Haley use it to criticize her opponents.
Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt.
But some economists say there needs to be a whole lot more discussion on how the next president is going to tackle the country's $34 trillion national debt.
The United States is reaching a point we've never reached in our history, with government debt reaching over 100% of the size of the economy.
According to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, the more than $34 trillion of debt amounts to $259,000 per American household. The skyrocketing national debt has been an issue for a while now. Now, just 20 years ago, that debt was at $7 trillion. That's a long way away from what we're seeing today at over $34 trillion.
It's like a crazy ant in the basement. Everybody knows she's there, but nobody talks about her.
Back in 1992, Ross Perot's presidential run focused on reducing the national debt.
We are looking on the edge of a revolution of young people who are starting to realize that we, our generation, have put them $4 trillion in debt, and they don't like it, and they shouldn't.
Chris Edwards, an economist with the Cato Institute, says when the next president enters office in 2025, the federal government will be raising $5 trillion in taxes, but spending $6.6 trillion, or 32% more.
I think the politicians, to be prudent, we want them to be prudent. They need to deal with the debt and deficit before it implodes and damages the standard of living of millions of American families.
Now, Mackenzie, it's an important issue. Edwards says that every presidential candidate from both parties should be putting out plans to deal with.
Today, how much have the current presidential frontrunners contributed to the national debt?
Right. So according to the Committee for a Responsible Budget, former President Donald Trump added over $8 trillion to the national debt during his time in office. And as of 2022, the committee says President Joe Biden has added $4.8 trillion to the national debt. And that number is growing now in both cases. The federal government spent trillions on emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mackenzie.
National correspondent Janae Bowens, thanks so much. Bringing down the U.S. debt means raising more revenue. Back in 2022, Congress authorized a boost of $80 billion to the IRS, partially to put a dent in how much we owe. According to the IRS officials, the funds are paying off. They say a total of $520 million has been pulled from millionaire households, some of it coming from delinquent taxes, and some from households with at least $250,000 in tax debts. This as GOP lawmakers hope to claw back some of that IRS funding.
The top-line agreement includes hard-won concessions to cut more billions, as you know, from the IRS giveaway and the COVID-era slush funds. It replaces accounting gimmicks from the prior FRA agreement, and it brings Congress much closer to regular order.
More than half the money was earmarked to revive flagging enforcement of corporations and wealthy households. Officials say pulling back the funds should not impact the IRS upgrades, at least for the time being.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
A spectacular sky in and around Cincinnati this morning. Rare January mammatus clouds added texture to the red sky, culminating in this rainbow over the Queen City. But in the northern plains and Great Lakes, the story is the snow. Travel is treacherous in places like Iowa, where blizzard warnings were up all day, while in the south, severe weather caused damage in several places, including here in Arkansas.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on TikTok.
Republican presidential candidates now have just a matter of days to win over Iowa voters. I'm Atrell Nashar with a look at what they're up against.
Months of campaigning all comes down to Monday in Iowa, where Republican voters will be the first to choose their nominee for president. Sinclair National correspondent Atra Al-Nashar reports on the state of the race in the final days before the Iowa caucuses.
The frontrunner in the Republican presidential primary back in Iowa this weekend.
We have our best poll numbers. We have the best everything despite this. And maybe because of this.
Though former President Donald Trump spent much of the week in D.C. and New York courthouses.
In a way, I guess you'd consider it part of the campaign, because if you really look at it, they are doing this. It's never been done like this in this country.
On Saturday and Sunday, holding events in Cass County, which he won in 2016, and Warren County, where he came in close second to Senator Ted Cruz. Speaking of second place, it's considered a top prize for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Put our own people first. We have to put governor.
Sharpening their attacks against each other.
We don't need another mealy-mouthed politician who just tells you what she thinks you want to hear.
The field of candidates shrunk this week when former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie dropped out. Businessman Vivek Ramaswamy and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who both poll in the single digits or lower, are still in the race.
And it's going to take somebody coming from the outside to get this right.
There's always a surprise in Iowa. I want to be that surprise.
An unwelcome surprise, the weather. Meteorologist Rebecca Kopelman at KGAN in Cedar Rapids says Iowa is bracing for what will be, by far, the lowest temperatures they've had all winter.
It's going to be wind chills of what it actually feels like to your skin of 20 to 30 degrees below zero at times. That's dangerous. I mean, that's the point where you just feel it in your bones.
The variable often hardest to predict are Iowa voters themselves, notorious for last-minute decisions.